Today we present an adrenaline ensemble that provides surprising power and driving fun away from the usual brands. Petrol versus electric, 2 GTs, 2 characters, 1 dual. Which Kia is more convincing in 3 exciting categories? And another one that you have to have on your radar, the Hyundai Kona N, a compact powerhouse that gets your pulse racing. Driving fun, emotions, and smoking tires. Very few people think of the Kia brand like that. A few years ago, it was still known for calm, everyday cars, but today it looks completely different. Combining almost 1,000 horsepower, these 2 models shed a whole new light on the Korean brand. What they're capable of is shown in the Motorvision Triple D test. In other words, design, drift, and drag race. There is 1 point per category. Who is ahead and where? In 2017, Kia turned the brand's image upside down with the Stinger GT. The letters GT stand for the extra portion of performance. In the case of the coupe sedan, a 3.3-litre V6 with 366 horsepower and a sporty all-wheel drive that sends up to 100% of the torque to the rear axle. Since the 2020 facelift, a drift mode has been on board. This will be an advantage later. And it brings the power and emotion of the GT series into the electric age. In the rather inconspicuous Kia EV6 GT slumbers a breathtaking 430 kilowatts, aka 585 horsepower, divided between 2 electric motors, one on the front axle and one on the rear. The EV6 GT has already proven its comfort and suitability for travel on the 1,600-kilometre Motorvision road trip from Oslo to Frankfurt. The outstanding charging capacity of up to 240 kilowatts attracted positive attention, but its wild side has remained hidden until now. And today, here at the Hockenheim Ring, the 2 are facing each other. Kia invited us journalists to show how much fun their models can be. But what interests me is which one is more fun, the combustion engine or the electric car? We will also let the rear loose later and compare the 2 models in a drag race. But first, let's talk about the design. In the left corner, a sporty coupe sedan called the Stinger GT. Visually, vertical air inlets at the front, the 19-inch light alloy wheels, and a 4-pipe exhaust system underscore its distinctive appearance. Typical competitors: Audi S5 Sportback or BMW 4 Series Grand Coupe. In the right corner, a crossover SUV. The EV6 GT design is drawn fiercely, and the appearance on the 21-inch rims is chunky. But the 1.55-metre-high Korean doesn't really look that sporty. Apart from the neon green brake calipers, nothing betrays its potency compared to the normal EV6. A true wolf in sheep's clothing. Even if that can be a reason to buy it, the points for emotional design clearly go to the Stinger. And now things are getting serious. In an open space in the middle of the Hockenheim Ring, the journalists are to learn how to drift under the guidance of instructors Tim and Frank. A brief introduction to the car is followed by a couple of warm-up exercises in slalom. First in the Kia Stinger. Warm-up lap for the first challenge. The slalom. So first get warm, get used to the car. But still the nervousness increases slowly. The aim is to get faster and faster and to get to know the limits of the car. How far can I go with the car without it swerving?
Yes, you noticed that you yanked the steering wheel pretty hard at the end, and then it went straight over the front axle.
Yes, exactly. Try to be even calmer with the steering. What looks like child's play from the outside still requires full concentration.
Yes. Very nice, clean steering.
Praise from the instructor, clean steering. However, I think it was a bit slower now than on the first lap. While understeer was the big issue with the Kia Stinger, the EV6 GT sometimes spins out. Yes, very nicely applied the brakes to reduce speed. Very clean. How does the driving experience of the EV6 differ in slalom? Definitely different turn-in behavior. You have a different feel for the speed. I feel a lot slower. And the steering is much softer. So that was definitely better with the Stinger. More feedback on the steering. And that even in sport mode. The lack of engine noise makes the EV6 GT seem slower. In fact, it's actually faster. That was the last pass. I can already tell that it's easier and more fun to drive the Stinger. Simply from the steering. It's tuned more sharply. Everything is very soft here. I'm ready for the next challenge. Now it's time to drift. I'm particularly looking forward to that. And then I think it will also be a big challenge to drift with the electric car. I'm very excited. Round 2. Drifting in a circle. The professional demonstrates and explains what is important. Important when you're drifting, especially if you have a circular path. First build up a basic speed, which should be 5 kilometers an hour below where we start pushing over the front axle. So a relaxed basic speed. Then a burst of gas, the rear brakes away, we counter steer, basically catch the rear. And as soon as the rear wants to straighten out again, we step on the gas again, and basically have this kind of oscillation the whole time. This time we start in the EV6. Does the drift work right away? It's now a question of putting into practice all that has just been said. I'm super nervous because there was so much input at once. In theory, I drive in relatively slowly, 15 kilometers an hour, then give it a burst of gas, the rear brakes out immediately, and then in the first lap, only catch this swing again. And then in the next few laps, I try to give it several gas bursts, and maybe at some point find a pedal position in which I can go through the corner smoothly. The theory is already in place. Words must now be followed by deeds, but the first attempt fails.
Wait a little bit. First steer and wait to see what happens.
How the hell am I supposed to regulate this? But the other journalists hardly get the EV6 tamed either. Yes, that wasn't even driven into the circle. With the electric car, we have the small problem that the batteries are in the vehicle floor. That means the car has an extremely low center of gravity, which makes it a bit snappy. This means that when we step on the gas, the rear brakes out very quickly and then quickly straightens out again. Then we just have to be even quicker on the steering with the counter steering and have even more feeling on the gas. Yes, the topic again. Turned in and straight on the gas. Let the vehicle drive a little in the circle first. With the EV6 GT, we have 585 horsepower and over 700 newton meters of torque. The smallest burst of gas can be too much. You have to have a lot of feeling there. Practice makes perfect here. And after a few laps, the first drifts succeed. And gas and gas and gas. Yes, well done. So you notice when the rear comes, we really have to be very quick on the gas. And then the drift can be kept really nice with the EV6. Drifting half a lap doesn't sound like a lot, but in a 585 horsepower electric car on wet roads, you can count that as a great success. Time for the next challenge. Switch cars. Now we have switched from the EV6 back to the Stinger. This is now the complete opposite with drifting. Be very careful with your foot on the EV6. Here I have to push much harder now to make the rear brake out. I am very excited. Is the Stinger easier to control, thanks to less power and gradually increasing torque? After the first couple of tries, it turns out to be tricky too. Either the tail doesn't break out at all, That was not enough. Or the sports sedan makes merry pirouettes.
You know why you didn't spin, right?
Too much gas. It's so minimal.
Limit range.
Yes, exactly. Either it doesn't break out at all, or I spin it right away.
See that you have a slightly higher basic speed. Then you really only have to tap the gas once, and then the car doesn't come as hard, but a bit smoother, and you're also slow to countersteer.
But not only throttle and steering have to be considered.
A typical mistake is how and where you look. It works relatively well in the beginning, circular ground speed. Then it triggers, and as soon as the tail comes around, people start to lose their sight. No longer looking at cone after cone, but just straight ahead. A bit overwhelmed the first time. Even in the Stinger, there's a sense of achievement after a little practice. Yeah, cool. Really good here too.
That's the beauty. You just do a few laps in a row and eventually it will work. Nice. In the midst of countless failed attempts, the drift eventually worked out with both cars. But which one was more fun? With the EV6 GT, you're blown away by the power that comes out of it. That can't be put into words. But still, I have to say, it's not that much fun because it's very difficult to handle. You don't necessarily get the kind of feedback you get with the Stinger, with the EV6, and that makes it extremely difficult to get into a stable drift. So the second rating drift goes to the Stinger GT with a slight lead, and the score is 2-0. Last chance for the EV6 to score the next point in the drag race. In the supreme discipline in the electric car, we compete against the almost 220 horsepower weaker Stinger GT. And clearly numerically, the EV6 is superior. We also only have 61% battery left. That means the full power is no longer there. That could be a disadvantage. Also because we have a slightly wet road. We can't drive in GT mode. We only drive in sport mode. Above that, the Stinger has a launch control. We don't have that. We'll just step on it and see what happens. The numbers speak for the EV6, but maybe the Stinger will also create the sensation. 3, 2, 1, go! The Stinger wins the start thanks to launch control, but the torque in the EV6 can't be beat. But he got off to a good start at first. He started better than me, but I got him in the last meters. That was extremely tight. The EV6 accelerates to 100 in 3.5 seconds, almost 2 seconds faster than the Stinger. As expected, the electric crossover wins every drag race and reduces the difference to a final score of 2-1. Design and drift went to the Stinger with a slight lead. In the drag race, the EV6 GT was clearly ahead. But of course, the subjective perception of sportiness is also important. The fun factor in the car. Both have their own sides. The Stinger also because you're sitting a little lower, a little more wrapped up in the interior. You feel a little more, yes, race car is an exaggeration now, but you also feel a little more secure. Still, the EV6 has a whole different charm because it's such a sleeper, a wolf in sheep's clothing, that you can use to outperform any sports car on the Autobahn. So each has their own advantages. With the two GT models, EV6 and Stinger, Kia proves that they also have a wild side. Kias can be fun, and if you didn't know that, you know it now at the latest. Hyundai's first N model, the 130i, hit like a bomb. It sold 54,000 units in its first 4 years, won awards, and created a new fan base. Hyundai is now venturing into new territory. The Kona N is shaking up the small segment of compact performance SUVs. Is it a hot hatch for old people, or is it capable of more? There it competes against the VW T-Roc R and the Ford Puma ST. One is more expensive and has more power. The other is cheaper and has less power. The Kona positions itself very skillfully in the middle. but I'm not at all sure whether these are really the main competitors, or rather the brand brother i30N, because I'm looking for a compact fun car for a medium-sized budget. I'm actually well served with the hot hatch. So why reach for the SUV, which is more expensive and has to lose sportiness simply because of its geometry? Or does it not have to at all? We look at what the differences to the i30N are and what ultimately speaks for the Kona. Starting with the most obvious differences, the Kona has around 4 centimeters more ground clearance than the i30N, so 170 instead of 132 millimeters. The two-part head and tail lights do not inspire enthusiasm for everyone. The interior is rather classic, with lots of buttons and rotary switches. A head-up display and rear seat heating are optional in the Kona N, but not in the i30N. The engine is the same as in the compact brother, a 2-litre turbo petrol engine with 280 horsepower. The top speed of 240 kilometers per hour is 10 less. We start our test drive with a classic sprint. How well does the launch control work? We go into N mode. Long press on ESC off. ESC is off. Activate launch control. Here we go. Wow, it really pushes forward. It snakes a bit back and forth on the front axle. .5 seconds from 0 to 100. That's just as fast as a Hyundai i30N. And the i30N also had a launch control in the switch. But that was pointless, because as soon as you let off the brake, the revs you had built up before went right down again. The automatic transmission is a bit better here. The speed for the launch control can even be set in advance in the menu. In contrast to the T-Roc R, there is no all-wheel drive for the Kona N. And so the 20 horsepower more powerful Wolfsburger is also 0.7 seconds faster to 100 kilometers per hour. But whether that justifies a price difference of 12,000 euros is questionable. Ford's competitor is called the Puma ST, has 80 horsepower less than the Kona N and is around 3,000 euros cheaper. So from a purely logical point of view, a car becomes less sporty as soon as you make it higher, as is the case with the Kona. Of course it is higher than an i30N, which also has the same ground clearance as its base model, so it's not lowered. But I have to say the electronic differential lock makes up for it here. You can enter the curves in a very sporty way and really hardly notice your higher center of gravity. But despite the same acceleration values, the Kona N feels subjectively slower. First of all, we have 3 different driving modes. You can choose between Eco, Normal and Sport. If Sport is not enough for you, take a look at the menu here. Here is the N mode. First of all, you have a beautiful sports display here. Here I can see how hard I press the gas pedal, my oil temperature, my engine temperature. I can set race timers. Everything that you want. And if you scroll to the side, you can set your individual modes here. That's the custom mode 1 that I set for myself, a kind of sport light mode, a bit on sport everywhere, but not yet on Sport Plus. And with the custom 2 mode, I just made everything completely red, everything set to the highest level of sportiness. Then you can also decide for yourself how you want to use the N buttons on the steering wheel. I have now put Custom Mode 1 on the left button and Custom Mode 2 on the right button. But instead of the modes, I can also put something completely different on it. For example, I switch through my driving modes and start my lap timer. Also possible. The engine sound also changes in the different modes, but even with the sportier setting, the soundscape falls short of expectations. When I drove the i30N for the first time, I was particularly pleasantly surprised by its sound. Those rally pops that come out of the exhaust back there. What immediately strikes me as positive are the rally pops back there from the exhaust. It's a very satisfying sound. Unfortunately, the Kona N isn't quite as loud and not quite as nice. So you hear that throaty sound back there. But it's different than the i30N. In addition to the Kona, the N family consists of the i30 and the i20. They represent Hyundai's racing genes from rallying in the form of sharply tuned road cars. The coordination and development takes place not only in South Korea, but also in Germany at the Nürburgring. Also with the i30N, there was initially a manual gear shift. It still exists. But there's now an 8-speed dual-clutch automatic for the i30N, and that's exclusive to the Kona. Am I missing shifting? Yes. So shifting gears yourself is more fun. However, I have to admit, this automatic in here is very attentive. You can rely on the automatic. Switching gears yourself is of course a little more fun. And above all, the switching operations are very fast. I press the pedal, and it doesn't take a second for the gear to change. And I'm down a gear. I have to switch to the other mode, then I can see my consumption again. It's just a good 10 litres. The Kona N is specified with 8.5 litres. But indeed, if you move it humanely, which I think most Kona N customers will do, it's going to be difficult to drive under 10 litres, especially if you drive a lot in city traffic. Or when the enticingly glowing red button on the steering wheel tempts you to become unreasonable. In addition to these two N keys, there is also an ejection seat button. At least that's what it looks like. It says NGS on it. Sounds like a gas, sounds like nitro injection. No, it's not, but it goes a bit in that direction, because it's a kind of power button. N stands for Nürburgring or Namyang. That's why the car's called that, where the car was tuned. And GS for Grin shift. So it's a Grin mode. What happens when I press that? Then I have a super boost for 20 seconds, in which the turbo runs at top performance, the gearbox. I even have 10 horsepower more. Instead of 280, I have 290 horsepower for a short time. And I'll show you the whole thing. I press it. It downshifts straight away. Oh shit! That's another huge difference. Wow! And the timer is counting down in the dashboard. Now we have 5 seconds left. When that expires, you have to wait another 40 seconds to turn Grin mode back on. I find that really cool. The ambitions of the Kona N go beyond simple everyday use. It is also at home on a track day or for tourist drives on the Nordschleife. But you can't deny a certain compromise in favor of comfort. How does it look? Did the Kona N convince me? It surprised me, but didn't necessarily convince me. Surprised because it's really insanely sharpened for an SUV. But not convinced, because as an i30 fan, I miss the sound on the one hand and the manual gear changer on the other. Well, maybe I'm not the average Kona customer. After all, the Kona base model is Hyundai's most successful model in Germany, and not the i30. If you want a head-up display or heated seats in the back, you just have to take this one. Some will think so, but there are still reasons to choose an SUV. On the one hand, maybe because you like the SUV design better. On the other hand, there are also people for whom an i30N might be too hard, too sporty. And of course, this is the perfect compromise, which is a bit more comfortable. Hyundai has no intention of topping the success of the i30N. It's more about occupying a niche where there is still little competition.